We're trying to figure this out too, everyone. We're live now, Brad, just so you know.
Oh, hello.
But we're trying to figure this out with everybody else as we're learning this news. Let me just share this to a few places first. It's shock, not the good kind. Let's see what we can find out what's going on here. So if you're following along, you're watching us live, Final Cut Pro 10.5 is out. However, there doesn't seem to be anything for Final Cut Pro Intel users, but we have some things to talk about. Just hold on one second. Let me get a few more places up here. A few more shares. Do you see release notes yet?
I should refresh those. I saw an update on the App Store finally. I haven't seen release notes.
We're going to talk about this in 1 minute. We're just trying to get some, what the heck's going on here? We don't know ourselves exactly what's going on. However, here's the comments. Tangier Clark says, all I can do is laugh or cry, one or the other. Right? So, listen, something is not right here. Something is absolutely not right. They got the Creative Summit coming up next week. And where is the Dolby Vision HDR update that Apple said is coming out this year? It's not there. It's not listed in this 10.5, right, Brad? Have you seen it?
Let me refresh the full release notes page, which has not been updated. As far as I can tell, no.
So, here's what I think's going on. This is specifically a release for the Silicon Mac, which is this many Final Cut Pro users at this point. The vast majority of Final Cut Pro users, millions of us, have virtually one checklist item in this update. So I think this is just something they had to check off the box. Where's the Dolby Vision HDR? Apple has said that's coming this year. It's not in there that I can see, which means we're getting a second update to Final Cut Pro in the rest of this year. My guess is, my hope is, that's what they're going to preview next week at the Creative Summit. The version with Dolby Vision HDR. Because this update makes no sense, 0 sense. So far, we haven't. Let me see if it's updated on my end of things. I don't think Power Final Cut Pro. It just says Final Cut Pro open. No, I still. Oh yeah, there you go. Update. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. But I have to say, I think that there's an explanation what's the heck's going on here. Let me just pull this up for people that don't know. App Store. Here we go. App Store. So this is the only 3 things that are showing in this update, 10.5. Improved performance and efficiency on Mac computers with Apple Silicon. Doesn't affect the majority of Final Cut Pro editors. The majority of Final Cut Pro editors are not on Silicon. Well, none of them are yet. Accelerated machine learning analysis for SmartConform, Apple Silicon. Option to create a copy of your library automatically transcode media to ProRes proxy. That's like nothing. That's not a big deal whatsoever.
I mean, you're
Is
talking
it?
about the proxy thing?
Well, yeah. Can't we do that? Kind of like do that now?
Kind of. You have to create the proxy files, and then you can choose to copy the event over with the proxies or original media. So the idea that you could copy a whole library, say you plug in an external hard drive, you're going to hand off to an editor, or maybe you're going to put it up on a server or put it on Google Drive or something. You can, as you're copying that library over, transcode the media at that point, and it all.
I see.
That's handy.
But that's one
handy thing.
One thing for a point full number update. Now, obviously, this full number update doesn't mean anything, and I was suspicious when they said that Logic 10.5 was jumping to 10.6 in 6 months. I'm saying something's not registering there either. Now, I'm the optimist. I'm not going to falsely support Final Cut Pro and Apple if this was all there was. If this was the update for 2021 with no Dolby Vision HDR support, which Apple has already said is coming out later this year. It's not in there. What does that mean? That means we got another update for Final Cut Pro coming. This is a maintenance update for the Silicon Macs, which the majority of us, nobody has Silicon Macs yet, right? They haven't shipped yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
So Tangier Clark says, I'm on another forum having to defend Final Cut Pro now. People are saying they're going to jump to Resolve. Listen, Resolve had that humongous update to 17 just this week. This just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, it makes sense if this is like we have to check this box for Silicon Macs, but 10.5.1 is coming out this year as well. That's going to be the big update. That would make sense to me.
I guess I don't understand the jump to Resolve argument. I mean, I could joke about it, but if Resolve has specific features you need in your workflow today, sure, go ahead and use it. But Resolve does not equal Final Cut in terms of keyword ranges, favorites, and the magnetic timeline. It just it isn't there. The cut page is way underdeveloped, to compare to Final Cut, and it's a more traditional editing system. I don't have a problem with Resolve. I'm really excited about Resolve 17.
I am too.
And I use Resolve. In fact, I'm using Resolve at this very moment for coloring a trailer that I'm handing off. So I don't have a big problem with it, but the idea of I'm switching, that's it. It's like you already paid your money.
Yes.
for one or the other or both. So just use the one tool for what it's good at and use the other tool for what it's good at. And thank goodness they have really good XML support back and forth. So you don't have to. Anyway, for anybody who's getting hysterical. Now,
don't do that. Yeah.
Am I a little disappointed by this silent drop of 10.5? It feels like a really odd timed, just quiet sort of drop with no fanfare, nothing.
Right.
Nothing exciting in the marketing or whatever. Yeah, it's a little odd. I would say let's wait till next week and see if Apple's got some further clarification or explaining they have to do.
Yes, I agree. Once again, this is the big point. Apple has already said that an update to Final Cut Pro will have Dolby Vision HDR. It's not in 10.5. They said it's coming out this year. So I suspect we're going to see 10.5.1 with the features that we've been expecting for something as major as going from 10.4 to 10.5. I mean, I mentioned today, we were on the chat earlier with Brad, and 10.4 is 35 months old, almost 3 years old. This is a joke to think that go from 10.4 to 10.5 and this is what you get. These 3 little checklist items. Doesn't make sense. I'm not going to jump on any bandwagons and bash Apple or Final Cut Pro team. We'll see what they have to show at next week at the summit. So there's a little bit of a joke here from Tangier Clark. Brad, your sequel off the 10, off the X.
Yeah. I was calling it Back on Track, the DaVinci Resolve story. So that was my title, off the 10.
So one more thing next week, Final Cut 11. I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be Final Cut 11 next week, but it's Final Cut. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so when you're ordering a Silicon Mac, as of, as soon as they were available to order, you had the option to pre-install Logic and Final Cut. Obviously, they couldn't ship those versions without Silicon support.
Right.
So it somewhat makes sense to me. Why it isn't just called 10.4.11?
Right.
That's the marketing side that I'm a little confused. Or why was 10.4.9 not just called 10.5?
Right.
And then this is 10.5.1.
Exactly. Because
It's
10.4.9, yeah.
It's a little weird. But, again, Dolby Vision's coming, so there's at least that. And that's guaranteed by the end of the year. And I think if I had to bet or guess, I would think Apple would be able to show that off next week. So we'll see.
That's listen. Before you talk, don't be talking about jumping ship. Come on,
unless it's from Premiere, then I'm all for it.
Well, that's true. So here's the thing. Just wait. Apple has said Dolby Vision HDR is coming this year to Final Cut. Okay, the iPhone coming out Friday, Dolby Vision HDR is not in this update. Okay, we're probably going to it looks like we're getting another update this year. I'm going to presume, and I'm going to hope that the Final Cut Pro team shows us that new version next week, because I don't want to see this version next week. That I'll just turn it off if this is all they're going to show us. Show us. So, but you can knee-jerk reaction. I'm going to quit. I'm going to go to Resolve. I'm not going to do that. Clearly,
No.
just as Eric Emmerich says, clearly just a silicon update, not needed, but not the real update. I agree. It would be very strange. Just the software devs have the silicon ones at the moment, Braden Storrs says, of course. So this is an unusual turn of events, but I completely think Apple said a new version of Final Cut's coming out with Dolby Vision HDR. This doesn't have it. That means there's an additional version of Final Cut Pro coming out this year. I certainly expect the Final Cut Pro team to be showing us something, previewing that. But I mean, it's also only 6 weeks left to the end of the year.
Yeah.
So they could certainly preview it or release it next week. This is like a stopgap. This is the new version, 10.5, but it's a stopgap version. It's just to get the Apple Silicon, because the Macs are coming out. Are they coming out tomorrow? The phone's coming out tomorrow.
Well, you can already order them, so I don't know.
But
when
I mean,
they
arriving.
I don't know exactly when they'll ship.
Because the phone's coming tomorrow. I'm getting mine tomorrow. So I'm going to have Dolby Vision HDR on my phone, right?
Yeah.
So...
Well, people already have iPhones that shoot Dolby
Well, that's
Vision.
true. That's absolutely true.
So, like, Mark Spencer did a video on it, and his workaround was to color grade in HLG HDR instead of, because there's no Dolby Vision yet. So,
Right. So Tangier Clark had a great point. He says, I think it's the emotional reaction, Brad. Magic Mask is awesome, but I'm sticking with Final Cut Pro. He's talking Magic Mask in Resolve 17.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
It is really cool.
But-
I mean, there's no reason why you can't use Resolve for those things when you need them.
Right.
And use them both. And there's a free version of Resolve, so it doesn't even cost you any money. It's not...
You know something? I agree. I have the free version of Resolve. However, when I saw the Resolve demo and he showed that little keyboard for $295 or free if you get the studio version, I'm tempted to get it just to have the keyboard studio version, just because I like those shortcuts. specifically for an NLE. What do you think about that keyboard? The quick edit or whatever they call it, quick something?
Yeah, I mean, I think my complaints with it would be, I mean, it's interesting because you essentially get it free. Like
Right.
if you order it now, you get it free. Or you're paying for that and you get a copy of Resolve Studio, however you want to look at it. But the way
Exactly, one or the
Blackmagic
other.
said,
Right.
buy Resolve, you have to buy it from specific resellers because of taxes and whatnot, but we'll ship this to you along with a copy of Resolve. So that's really cool. I think the negatives for me is I'm not a huge fan of the cut page.
Okay.
I think it borrows some inspiration from Final Cut, but it also looks to the past. It looks at linear tape deck editing, and I was never really fond of editing tape deck to tape deck and using those controls. And so it's just kind of odd to me. What I'm excited about is that they said some of the features in the cut page will make their way to the edit page, and I'm hoping eventually they kind of merge into different modes. And that's something Grant actually said. And so I'm interested to see what features will come over. I think, they have a whole source tape mode, which is essentially in Final Cut, if you've keyword tagged a bunch of things and you've entered metadata in Final Cut, you can arrange your clips, sort your clips by those and then use the continuous playback to roll through it all. And the source tape is kind of like that, where it arranges everything for you, but then you jog, shuttle, fast forward, and rewind through it with that little knob. And I don't know. I'm just somebody who grew up with, being able to move my cursor over something. So the idea to linearly go back and forth through footage is not that appealing to me.
Right.
If you did a lot of tape editing in the 80s, maybe it's your jam. Maybe you're nostalgic for that, and you think it's really cool that computers have done that. I'm more interested in, companies like LumaFusion that are taking advantage of the iPad. I think that's
LumaFusion's
that's
great.
a more forward direction in terms of software development in my mind than like being inspired or being really. It's just nostalgia. I think it's Grant Petty being nostalgic for how he used to edit and trying to find a way to get computers to do it.
Right. That could be. That could be. So Alex Golner, he was on the chat earlier with us. He had the best thing on Twitter. He had the Charlie Brown holding the football, or Lucy holding the football and Charlie Brown coming after it. Like this is here's what the Final Cut Pro team is doing, and here's the Final Cut Pro editors, Charlie Brown coming up, and then they swipe the ball. Listen, I have a hard time believing that this is the update they promised us this year. I'm sorry. If it turns out that this is all they give us this year, I'll be right there with you. But I think this is just specifically for the Silicon Mac. Well, that's what the notes say, except for that one other feature. Where's the HDR? Where's the Dolby Vision HDR? It's not there. So they've got to have another version coming out, 10.5.1. That'll be the big feature update version this year. Apple has said
a feature.
Well, if they're going to do one feature at a time now listen, the vast majority of Final Cut Pro editors, this update doesn't really benefit them because everything's for the Apple Silicon, at least two of the features, Apple Silicon. The third feature, it works on the Mac. So this just doesn't make any sense. Apple has always been about all their users, the majority of the users. This doesn't affect the majority of the users. It affects this many of the users. So I'm telling you, they got to have another update coming out, 10.5.1. And hopefully that's what the team's going to show us next week, a preview of it, or if they show us a preview, I certainly hope we can talk about it in public. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They've done that in the past. They did it with 10.4.
Doing it, they've got to let people in on it a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
In the meantime, I'm just gonna keep working. I'm not that stressed. I'm a little bewildered, a little baffled.
Well, I am too. We both have question marks over our heads. We both have question marks over our heads. I got one right there.
Pitchforks. I'm not burning down anything.
No, not yet. Not yet. If this was the only update they did for the rest of this year, yes, I'd be I'd still wait a couple of days until the summit, and then let's wait till the summit and the Final Cut Pro team presents. Then we can make rational decisions. I'm telling you, there's another update got to be coming. So we had a comment here. I think people are seeing ongoing commitment from Blackmagic, though Apple's interests seem to be fading. I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense. He goes, well, there's a few things in Final Cut Pro I'd like to see in Resolve, but there are many things in Resolve I'd like to have in Final Cut Pro 10. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's always the case. That's always the case.
I would definitely say after the last Tuesday's presentation that Apple is more behind Final Cut Pro than I have ever seen them since maybe 2007. Like the just where they were placing it, what they were saying. You got to imagine, the Final Cut product managers having to work their way up the company and include certain things. It feels like there was a lot more effort to include Final Cut in the discussion of Mac. I mean, we did see that a bit in 2016 with the release of the new MacBook Pros. To be fair, they, Susan Prescott did a demo of it and whatnot, but I still feel like there was more pride about Final Cut Pro. There's been past remarks, I've seen at Apple events where I think it was just even last year, or maybe it was the year before, but there was a kind of an offhand like, oh, those guys, work pretty hard. Like they're almost apologizing about Final Cut still. And I feel like now there's a badge of honor. Look at how fast this is. Look at how well it performs. And, they also highlighted Resolve. They also highlighted Cinema 4D. We talked about that earlier. Right, exactly. But I do not feel any of that. Like, 2011, after the release of Final Cut 10.0, I was wondering, is Apple just going to kill this product? Now I feel like Apple's behind it more than they have been in many, many years.
I 100% agree with you. So people are talking about Resolve, Apple marketing videos mentioned Resolve more than Final Cut Pro. I have faith in Apple. I have faith in the Final Cut Pro team. What I'm asking, instead of jumping on the bandwagon of bashing, wait till the summit next week. At least wait until then, and let's revisit this whole 10.5. So here's a good comment from Mitchell Harris. Remember, 10.4.9 was updated with fanfare. 10.5.1 with Dolby Vision is around the corner. That's what we're saying. That's what we're both saying. Apple has already said Final Cut Pro is going to be updated this year with Dolby Vision HDR. It is not in 10.5, which means there's another update coming. Just cool your jets and wait till the summit next week to see if we have more news to talk about. Listen, if Apple needs a good whack, I'll be the first one to give it to them, but I'm not giving it to them prematurely, right? But wait.
Yeah. I think that note about the fanfare is a really good point. Like 10.4.9 had press releases. It was a big deal.
Yes.
This was quietly slipped to us. I think it's merely just so that when people's MacBook Airs and MacBook Pros and Mac Minis arrive, and for those who pre-installed or try to install it, that it'll work. That's really the whole reason behind it.
And that's the best comment. That's the best comment. 10.4.9 was uploaded with fanfare. They had a press release from Apple on the thing. This 10.5 doesn't. It was just a fluke of the naming, the way it worked out. 10.5.1, it's what's got to be coming this year. So that's the thing. So just calm down. Listen, the 10.5 doesn't do anything for me. I don't have Silicon Mac. I'm not going to be bothering with it. But let's wait till the summit next week. There's a reason Apple scheduled that summit next week. Okay? There's a reason. Let's see what happens. Does everybody agree with that?
I agree with it.
Yeah. But somebody says, once again, B-Raw. We'll have to wait on B-Raw, see what's going on there.
Oh, yeah. That was the one thing from Resolve 17 that I was hoping was like, because it would be a sign of B-Raw coming to Final Cut if ProRes RAW was in Resolve 17. And hey, maybe that's another announcement that we'll see. We just got to wait and see.
So this is what I don't want to hear. Braden Story says, unless they stick Dolby Vision update in the codec support update, that would be terrible. then I'll join you. No, I can't see that. You know, oh, good Lord, Braden, why'd you say that?
No, it's got to be implemented in the software, because right now when you set up a Final Cut library in a project, you select whether it's wide color gamut, HDR, and whether it's PQ, or if it's HLG. So there's gotta be some sort of checkbox, or, you know, I believe Dolby Vision is like metadata or information on top of like the HDR10 spec.
Mm-hmm.
I think, but basically it would have to be something implemented in the design of the UI. You couldn't just put it in and say it's there. There's support.
Right. So we got a comment. There's not going to be a new version next week. The Summit notes say Apple Day.
Apple Day's on Thursday.
Apple Day will have the Pro Video team, not the Final Cut Pro team. That's what they've done every year.
Hold on.
The Video team.
Pro Video team, Pro Apps is Final Cut.
Right. They say
Pro
it every
Video
year.
Apps is Final Cut.
They never say the Final Cut Pro team. That's just the way we talk, the Final Cut Pro team. It's a Pro Apps team. It's a Pro Video team. That means nothing. I didn't say they're going to have a new version next week. I said they're going to show us something next week, perhaps a preview.
You hope they do, or else.
No, listen, there's a limit to how much I'm going to tolerate here. I mean, all of us. I mean, all the millions of Final Cut Pro editors, they know that. They know that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're going to have a new version next week. That would be 10.5 and 10.5.1 within a week of each other. That would be an all-time record. Of course, they can do what they want, but I'm just saying, let's wait. Let's wait. Calm down. Let's wait till next week to see what they actually present. That's all I'm saying.
So to make this perfectly clear, on the schedule it says live from Apple Park, what's new in Apple Pro Video. That's just the headline event. Now, when we talk about Apple Pro Video, that's Apple Pro Video Apps, and that is the Pro Video Apps product management team. So it will definitely be about Final Cut, Motion Compressor involved in that too. So yeah, there's definitely no, I don't think you need to read into that too much. Like we know this is an Apple presentation. We know that we can't rewatch it after you have to be there. You have to watch it live. So I just don't want anybody to be confused by that or read into it too much.
So Cedric says, okay, Richard, I said the 0.5 is not going to be much of an upgrade. Okay, you win. You win the prize. Do you have any prize you can give him, Brad? Maybe a coffee cup or something, an empty coffee cup? A lot of people were saying that. That doesn't have anything to do with what I'm talking about. I think there's going to be, listen, if there's no more update this year, we'll revisit that. But let's wait till the summit. Let's wait till the summit and see what's going on.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Richard. I think Final Cut will get more updates in the coming months, maybe sooner than that. But, knee-jerk reactions really don't interest me. I was shocked when I saw it, too. First, I saw the 10.5 came out, and then I saw what? It says, Bruce Babcock says, I feel Apple mentions Resolve a lot lately. Yeah, they do. But I think there's reasons for that.
I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, it's fine. They have to. I mean, I had Mark Bach, colorist in L.A., and he said, well, Resolve is one of the main, that's one of the main coloring applications that professionals use. Why wouldn't Apple show a professional? They've always done that. They do the same with Photoshop.
Blackmagic actually, in their marketings, are saying it's the #1 Hollywood post tool.
Right.
And I think it's if Blackmagic likes Apple and Apple likes Blackmagic, I think that's a good thing all around. I mean, Final Cut Pro 10 is an edit, like primarily for editing. Yes, you can do the other things.
Absolutely.
But when you're at a feature film level, it is a lot easier to just send your project off to Resolve and have professional colorists
and
work in Resolve on it. than it is to do everything in Final Cut. There are tools like Color Finale and Cinema Grade that make that easier, but you're going to want to move into Resolve. So I think that the two applications talking well together, and I think Apple and Blackmagic having a good relationship is great. I don't think there's a lot to read into that, because when it comes to editing, I think that specifically the task of editing, Final Cut Pro 10 is a much more refined tool.
So our friend Leo Hans says, why not releasing a 0.4x for Silicon and wait for Summit for 10.5? Because Silicon is a big step forward. Why? Listen, if they do 10.5.1 this year with a lot of features and some good stuff, will you be satisfied? I would be. The difference between a 0.5 and 0.5.1, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that's what I hope is happening. I hope it's happening.
Yep.
So what about Big Sur? I've tried to download it 4 or 5 times and it fails every time. It gets all the way to the end, downloads like the 14 gigabytes, whatever. It says initial installation failed. I'm not trying to install it. I'm just trying to download it, and it won't even download. But I've heard that Braden Store is laughing. Ha, ha, ha. I'm not sure what that's about. Good point about the HDR. That's what he's talking about. So, the HDR... So people are coming and saying, I'm hoping that they're wrong about it. So disappointed about 10.5. Okay, once again, wait till the Global Summit next week. Let's see, because if this is all that they do and there's nothing else, they're going to have some interesting discussions next week. They're going to be live from Apple Park. I have faith that they'll take care of it. Everyone will be under NDA at the summit. Not necessarily, Cedric, because we've had the ability, when 10.4 came out, 10.3 came out in 1 year. 1 year later, 10.4 came out, both at the summit. We were allowed to talk about 10.4, even though it wasn't released until December. They allowed us, they encouraged us to post on social media. That's what I'm thinking. Well, regardless of that, even if we're under NDA and can't discuss it, you'll see our demeanor change. You will see our demeanor be happy. Right, Brad?
That's right.
We won't be sad and whatever.
Well, I don't let external things influence me too much. That's not true. I shouldn't.
It just doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense to me that Logic was going from 10.5 to 10.6. This is the explanation. Well, 10.5 Logic came out in mid-May, and 10.6 is coming out 6 months later. It just that didn't make sense. This also doesn't make sense. I think there's another update coming this year, and I think that'll be the feature update. What we expected for 10.5 is going to be 10.5.1, and I think it'll be this year.
And
Wait a minute.
Right.
Wait a minute. Breaking news. 10.5 does include the Dolby Vision feature. I don't see it listed.
Oh, release notes are updated. Here we go.
Okay,
so Final Cut Pro 10.5 also includes the following: export HLG dynamic range with Dolby Vision 8.4 metadata.
Okay, it's there.
Fixes an issue with LUTs, improves HDR thumbnails, improves... Okay, now we can start bashing things. And
So it's bug fixes?
It's bug fixes, improves stability, fixes an issue with audio sync, could drift when retiming clips, improves reliability of social media content, improves crop controls, fixes an issue, copying between libraries and duplicate files. Includes built-in support for Avid DNX HR and DNX HD, so that's finally back. Okay, I don't see anything particularly excited, but there it is. So we were wrong. There's this is what I was waiting for, was full release notes.
Exactly.
They hadn't updated it, but there's I guess you do the Dolby Vision with HLG, which is interesting.
Well, if
which
that's
is probably
the case,
why Mark showed it off with HLG.
right. If that's the case, if this is all that 10.5 is, it's just, I guess their numbering system is completely non-relevant anymore. From 10.4 to 10.5 doesn't have any relevance. But let's. I guess I'll have to read the notes. It doesn't seem like. I don't know why. Why wouldn't they list those things on the Apple site, the website? I mean, the App Store.
I don't know. That's really odd to me because they wanted us to hop online and then start.
Well, that could be. Let me see if
talking, and then I don't know. Here's a link. If you got that pulled up.
Yes, let me pull that up.
Yeah, so there it is, Dolby Vision.
I'm still showing 10.4.10. Is it a caching thing? Oh, there we go. No, I refreshed. I got it now. So let me pull that up. History view. That. Close that thing.
It's because you were getting too good at predicting their stuff a couple years ago, so they've been
you're right. A couple years ago,
they're trying to throw you off. That's the whole.
Well,
we'll show you.
Okay,
you won't know what's coming when. Suckers.
There's the HL. See, I wonder why they wouldn't put that in the actual App Store. That's why we were saying
that's a big one. I mean, that's one they actually mentioned with the iPhone.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all fixes except for a couple of, well, the export HDL high dynamic range projects with Dolby Vision 8.4 metadata, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't that have to have metadata controls in Final Cut? That HLG export, wouldn't you think? So,
yeah, I haven't played enough with Dolby Vision to really tell you. I know that Resolve adds, like Resolve supports it, and you can take HDR stuff from Final Cut, bring it into Resolve, and then do kind of the final Dolby Vision pass to it. That's what you used to be able to do. But
Tomas says, I'm excited too, but very frustrating after 11 versions of 10.4, more than 2 years, 3 years. It's 35 months. 10.4 is 35 months. The number 10.5 certainly is disappointing. It's certainly, in the past, when they did full number updates, it was a major thing. 10.0 to 10.1 was major. 10.1 to 10.2, 10.2 to 10.3, 10.3 to 10.4, everyone was major. It wasn't this little piddly stuff of a couple of bug fixes, So in that case, this is the HLG one. We didn't know that initially. Now we know that is the one. So we'll have to see. This is going to be an interesting session with Apple next week. What do you say, Brad?
Well, they're just fortunate it's not in person.
Well, it's live, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Just saying. I can only bring virtual pitchforks. I don't know.
Well, here you go. This will make the Q&A with the team fun if there isn't more to show us. Absolutely it will.
Yeah.
Who is running marketing for Final Cut? They don't know how to do good marketing. Well, if this is all that 10.5 is after waiting for almost 3 years, once again, yes, doesn't look like we're going to get 10.5.1 this year, but 10.5.1 certainly is coming. Something's screwy to me. It doesn't compute, as they say.
Yeah, it doesn't jive.
It doesn't jive with the numbering system. They certainly should come out and explain.
The only thing I can think, because if you remember with the metal rewrite, there's this crap ton of work done for the metal rewrite, or so I was told. With this, I wonder with getting it onto Silicon, if there was just this nervousness about doing a Silicon rewrite or update and introducing new features that could potentially break under the new code. So, because now it's a universal app. If you remember when
Right. Yep, absolutely.
the original Final Cut had to, had to go from the PowerPC to the Intel, and I think they had a universal with Final Cut Studio and with Final Cut 6, and then it was an Intel only on Final Cut 7. I don't completely get it, but
I don't get it either.
Maybe there was a feeling of, we have these new features, we want to release these new features, but if we implement new features at the same time as bringing things over to the Apple Silicon, we'll be more likely to break things. I don't know.
Yeah, well, at this point,
that's my defense of the thinking.
Yeah,
but I really don't know.
And here's another good point. Andrew Howe says it does make sense to restart the numbering as is now a universal app. Yes, but still, they better give us something besides this at some point in the near future. This doesn't, after all these months and months of waiting, although 10.4.9, I kept saying, 10.4.9 seemed like it had, the proxy workflow seemed like it should have been in 10.5. Braden Store says also a ton of work went into Apple Silicon. Braden, I don't care about Apple Silicon. I'm on a Mac Pro, an Intel Mac Pro, and I will be for years, as is the majority of Final Cut Pro editors. We're not going to be switching to Apple Silicon. Small percentage will be, especially with these initial Apple Silicon Macs. They're at the very low end. So the majority of us are on Intel, and we want to see stuff for Intel. So we'll see. I'm not going to defend Apple's decision the way they've done this, and I will be critical of them if this is all that happens in the near future. We've already been somewhat critical today. That doesn't mean I'm going to jump ship.
No.
But I certainly am looking at getting Resolve 17 Studio with that free little keyboard thingy. I like physical stuff sometimes. We'll see if I do that or not.
You probably remember. Do you have any nostalgic tape editing memories, Richard?
Well, I started on Deck to Deck, SVHS though. The TV station I worked at had two SVHS decks and a third deck for the master. And
I had
kind of worked.
In the early 2000s, I had an SVHS VCR that I bought from a surplus store, and it had a jog shuttle on it. So and then you could have like the little boards between. I played around a little bit of that in my high school, early college days.
Right.
But it grew tedious very quickly for me.
Well, compared to the digital version, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no. Here's the thing, though. I have the Shuttle Pro. I like when I'm searching through one frame at a time using not the wheel, but just the clicking with my finger and just one frame at a time. I really like that rather than the arrow keys. First off, I can have my hand on it and just go left and right just when I'm searching for single frames. So I like that, but I don't use the jog wheel to go fast forward and reverse and stuff. I use JK and L.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. I noticed that iOS apps run on M1 processor and a little program called LumaFusion. I wonder if there'll be a purchase made by Apple to get that team to show love to editing. I'm not going to, everybody can do what they want as far as jumping on the bandwagon, but we'll see. Let's at least wait till the summit before we, I'm going to. I mean, what else are you going to do? Right? I'm not going to defend Apple. Apple has to stand on their own. I didn't defend Apple when Final Cut Pro 10 came out. Okay? People that want to argue, you can go ahead and argue. One thing I've learned about persuasion and arguing, you don't change anybody's mind. Nobody changes anybody's mind. You have your sides and you both argue back and forth. One side does not change the other side. You both leave with the same opinion that you came in with the argument with. Braden Storrs says, no excuse about features, but it seems like a lot of the team's workflows workforce went into that this year. Once again, Braden, I don't care. I don't care about Apple Silicon. I'm not interested. 2 years from now, I'll be interested when it comes out with a M2 or an M3. And besides, there's 700 people working on the Apple iPhone. They said at one point.
You mean on the camera?
The camera. I'm sorry, the camera. 700 people. Just because Apple Silicon came out, there's a separate team for that. You guys work on that. Final Cut Pro, let's work on the rest of the team, the core team, the video people should be working on for the majority of the editors. And I hope that's what they're doing, because the majority of editors are going to be on Intel Macs for years to come. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
So
that was fun.
So this maybe they had to get this out of the way. Now that we've seen the Dolby Vision HLG is there. Leo Hahn says an iPad Pro is as powerful as a Mac Pro 16. It's not as powerful. It's not as powerful.
The M1 is actually more powerful than the 16-inch MacBook Pro.
I don't care about the M1. I'm care about the M2 and the M3.
I'm just saying that's a good sign of things to come. If they've already beat the performance of even this year's pro lineup of MacBook Pros, then that's an impressive sign of things to come. Once they get to the Pro level chips,
right? That's what I'm saying.
Then that's going to be off the map.
I'm not saying I don't care about Apple Silicon. Of course, it's the future of the Mac. Of course, I'm saying these M1 chips are not the Pro level chips. They're at the bottom. Mac Mini, but MacBook Air, 13-inch MacBook
chip
Pro
that outperforms the current Pro level chip.
Well, it does not outperform my Mac Pro.
Single core processing for the base level Mac Pro, I think it might.
With I always put this up. What was it? The guy from YouTube. 16 tracks of 4.5K in a 16.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't, in terms of the raw power of your Mac Pro. It doesn't come close.
Well, if it did, that's fine. If it did, it's fine. I'll keep the Mac Pro and get a MacBook Pro with it. I'm saying the M1 is just the beginning. Yes, it shows a lot of promise. It's limited to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and you can't use eGPUs with it at this point. I'm saying that's not the Pro one that's coming. I'm saying there's going to be an M2 or whatever they want to call it, the M1 Pro or whatever. So I'm going to wait for that. The 16-inch, I'm not interested in a 13-inch MacBook Pro. I'm not interested in a MacBook Air, and I'm not interested in the Mac Mini. 16-inch MacBook Pro will get my attention, but it's got to have more than 16 gigabytes of RAM, although Alex Gollner said earlier that the RAM's being used differently, so we'll see. We'll see.
We shall see.
We've got a lot of people watching, but Tangier Clark says, they're Xeon server class chips. I understand that, but it's still Intel. Leo says you can buy 10 Mac Minis. I don't want 10 Mac Minis. That's like buying 10 cheeseburgers. I don't want them. I'm not interested. I'm not interested. And the Mac Pro is not almost end of life. The Mac Pro, they've just started 2 years to get to the Mac Pro. They said that at the event the other day. They said we're starting it's going to take an additional 2 years to get to that Mac Pro. At that point, we'll see what the Mac Pro has to offer. But that doesn't make a difference.
I would definitely not assume that the Mac Pro is going to be end of life anytime soon.
No, it's not. But by the same token, I'm interested. Here's what I'm interested in: the Pro machines. I'm interested in the iMac Pro. I'm interested in the 16-inch MacBook Pro when that gets an M1, and I'll probably buy one at that point. Okay. I'll trade my 2019. I have a 15. You have a 16. I have a 2019 15. Mm-hmm. And I'll probably buy one at that point, even though I don't use the MacBook Pro that much. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, we're talking about Final Cut Pro 10.5. Is that we were talking about it earlier, if it was going to come out the same time as Big Sur, and it did. Just came out a little later. Although Big Sur is still having problems. Big Sur is still having problems. Before you update to 10.5, make a copy of 10.4.10 or 10.4.9, whatever you have. And I also, before you update to Big Sur, back up. And in my case, I dual boot. I'm going to dual boot to Big Sur for the time being. So next week has become vastly more interesting, the Apple presentation, hasn't it, Brad?
There's, well,
more
I guess
interesting.
Look at it two ways. You could be really hoping that this is not all and that they have more to say and there's something big happening, or your expectations have sort of been managed and you're like, you know what, this is probably it. And I just, look forward to seeing some interesting presentations from people around the world using Final Cut, and maybe Apple will have some slick presentation, but I would say have low expectations, but maybe a little hope that there's more.
Well, listen, when 10.0 came out, this feels like the same thing when 10.0 came out, right?
It's a different feeling.
Well, the point is that people were just running and screaming and up and down, and I said, listen, I'm going to wait and see how it comes out. Now, some people will say it never caught back up to what 7 was.
That's not true.
No, of course it didn't. So Cedric says you need Big Sur for 10.5. I don't think so. I think it runs on Catalina, right, Brad?
Yeah, I'm able to upgrade. I haven't done it yet, but
yeah, you can. Catalina works. That's usually go back 1. So yeah. Eric Emmerich says iMac Pro with silicon and 6K screen. I'm in, absolutely. And then Braden Store says no 10.5 runs on Catalina. So at this point, can you tell us if you know something about Apple presentation next week? Yes, I just said it's going to be very interesting. That's my interest level for the Apple presentation next week has peaked because of this. I have lots of questions. I'm sure everybody has lots of questions. I'm sure they're going to be... This is what I hope. Before I see anything, I hope they're going to show us a preview of a future version of Final Cut, and we're going to come away, whether we can talk about it or not. I'm not talking about whether we can talk about it. We're going to come away from that event happy. If you see us happy, that means the future looks bright. If they allow us to talk about it, that'll even be better. That'll be better. This seems like a little bit of a rush job that they had to get it out for the, Apple corporate said, well, you got to get it out for the Silicon Mac so we can sell some Silicon Macs.
Which is interesting because the story I heard about the development of Final Cut Pro 10 was that originally they were just porting classic Final Cut over to 64-bit, and Steve Jobs told them, if you're going to go to 64-bit, you need to reimagine what video editing is like. That's the story we've heard.
Right.
And in this case, it is just pretty much just let's just get it over to Silicon. I mean, with some performance boosts. And
yeah,
look,
I understand.
That's welcome, and I think the future's bright for that, but we know
Absolutely.
It's going to be a 2-year transition. I'm not planning on buying an Apple Silicon Mac anytime soon.
I'm not either.
But, I'll see if they got a really cool iMac next year and the software support's there, then I would consider it at that point.
Exactly. I agree with you. So Tangier says, do you speculate there's already a Mac Pro level Apple Silicon chip in development? I doubt that. These chips are so low level. I'm not saying they're not fast, but they're so not a Xeon server chip capable. They're just really the bottom end of the Mac. Apple said 2 years, so that's 2022. Maybe they'll come out. I'd say they come out in 2022. And at that point, I'll look and see what it is. I like the fastest Mac currently going. That's why I got the Mac Pro. I don't care if they come out with a silicon version. That'll be fine. I'll deal with it then. Robert says, I'm running it on Catalina right now. Bruce Babcock, I really hope the presentation isn't showing how well it works on M1 computers. That we agree on 100%. I don't want to see that. I don't mind a section showing that. But like I said, the vast majority of Apple Final Cut Pro editors are on Intel, and they will be for years, the vast majority. Everybody's not out running it, getting an M1 Mac at this point. Some people will, but not the vast majority. There's 3 million, 4 million Final Cut Pro users out there. They're not going to sell 3 million of these for Final Cut Pro. Everybody's going to be staying on their Intel versions for the time being, so the majority will be on Intel. I hope you'll inform us. I will inform you as much as I can. But, however, Apple can control, and I will respect any NDA that they have. Absolutely, I always do. But they can't control whether I'm happy, whether I'm smiling, right, Brad? They can't control that. If I'm smiling and happy, that's good.
That'll be a future Apple product that installs in your brain.
That's true. That's true. They can't control my demeanor after the event. Braden Store says, I'm on a 2018 MacBook Pro as my main setup. It'll be quite a while before it makes sense to upgrade, especially with eGPU support on the Intel Macs versus the Silicon. Now, in my case, I have a MacBook Pro that I don't hardly use, so it's not my main machine. If, once again, when they come up with the 16-inch MacBook Pro Apple Silicon, I'll wait to see what the reviews are, how it performs, etc. I might wait for the M2 chip, the second generation, whatever it's going to be. And you got a comment, your happiness will be enough. Okay, let's hope that's true. 13-inch screen killer for M1. Anything each screen too small. Battery life is impressive, though. Yes. Listen, people that are buying the M1s machines, the MacBook Air, the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini, that's fantastic. I wish I needed one. I would pick one up, but I don't need one. The last couple updates from Resolve have been huge, not just the last one. You're absolutely correct about that. They've been going through the roof. However, one thing I'll say about Blackmagic updates, the literature is usually better than the actual update. They put out beautiful graphics and beautiful this and beautiful that, and it takes a long time to achieve what they show in the graphics and stuff. So this plus 17 is still in beta, right? I think it is, right?
Yeah, I guess I would say once they're out of beta, I've had no problems. I wait on Resolve.
Yeah.
I don't download the betas. I think that's more for people to test out and give feedback on than it is for real working. But
Right.
I would argue, when it comes to Adobe Premiere, I typically have issues.
Yeah.
And that's something that where they're like, oh, look at all these amazing features, and it rolls out and it has problems, and then they have to do bug fixes. Resolve, the beta can be buggy, but once it's like officially out, it seems pretty rock solid. And they know that people have to, rely on.
Here's one of the best comments of the day. Eric Emmerich. I'm never happy, and I think Apple knows most of us never are. That's very true, Eric. That's a great comment. That's my favorite, one of my favorites of today. Great comment. I'm going to be grumpy. I'm going to jump ship. I'm going to go to Resolve. I'm going to go to Premiere. Okay, that's fine. I'm not doing that. I have too many years in Final Cut. I'll always be using Final Cut. But I may start using Resolve a bit. We'll see. But the other thing is LumaFusion. Fantastic application. I really, really like it. So I can't open Resolve Beta on Big Sur 16-inch MacBook Pro. That's interesting. You mean 17, I presume? Yes, somebody said Dolby Vision. Yes, it is. They didn't show it in the App Store. They're showing it in the release notes. It is there. So scratch what we said about 10.5.1. Brad uses them all, it seems. Premiere, DaVinci, and Final Cut. All three, yes.
Yeah, I haven't touched Avid for a long time, but for different jobs, I use Premiere, Resolve, and Final Cut. Premiere is my least favorite of the three. I love Final Cut for editing, and DaVinci Resolve does have features that help my workflow out a lot. So
Well,
I do pop it open quite a bit.
you also shoot in Blackmagic Raw, right?
I actually haven't, because I
Oh,
just
you
like
haven't?
bringing my
Okay.
footage. I have a little bit. Um, I guess I should put an asterisk. So one of my jobs, we shoot stand-up comedians, and that is being shot on 5 Blackmagic Pocket 6Ks, and it is B-raw. So, but my own stuff, I did some early tests with B-raw and ProRes HQ with the log, and I really didn't see enough advantages. I'm confident enough in my white balance and my exposure that I didn't feel like I would be in trouble so much if I shot in ProRes. So I've mostly been shooting ProRes with that, but I do want to just switch over to B-raw completely and be editing in Final Cut. I just don't like having to transcode material before editing, and I
Sure.
don't love the editing experience in Resolve enough to start my edits there. I love it for finishing. I think it's great for transcoding. I make DCPs with it. I do a whole lot of things with Resolve, but if I have my choice, I definitely like to be editing in Final Cut.
Yep, absolutely. So this will be interesting. I am, if this is, I'm not the kind of person that gets in arguments about stuff. So we'll see what happens with the future of Final Cut. This 10.5, at this point, I'd say it's quite disappointing. Now, I'm not worried about the future of Final Cut. I'm talking about specifically 10.5. It's quite disappointing compared to the other previous updates, full number updates. Braden Storrs says Final Cut Pro 10 as a universal app is interesting, though. Still some challenges to overcome with the use of the iPad Pro. Having it running on M1 is a big logistical step towards having that be a possibility. The M1 chip is one thing. The iOS and iPad OS, Mac OS and iPad OS are two different beasts, different libraries and everything else. I'm not worried about the future of Final Cut. However, at this point, I'd have to say 10.5 is pretty darn disappointing. We'll see what the Final Cut Pro team has to say next week at the Creative Summit. It's going to be very interesting. It's gone up a couple degrees, not necessarily in a good way for me for next week. But listen. I'm not, I didn't jump when Final Cut Pro 10 came out, 10.0, and I'm not going to jump now.
Nah.
I have too many years in Final Cut. However, if they deserve criticism, I'll let Brad do that. No, listen, I've had a top 100 list for Final Cut Pro features for years and years and years. So there's criticism right there. Why don't you have this feature? Why don't you have that feature, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I do on Final Cut Pro Radio and Final Cut Pro TV Live, commentary. Lots and lots of commentary. So we'll start next week with the Creative Summit when the Global Summit starts.
Yep.
But anyway, this is going to bring a barrage. It already has. Mark Vox says big expectations bring big disappointments. So what? That doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, you think that the guys that went to the moon the first time, they didn't have disappointments and stuff trying to get there? Yeah, that's no big deal. I still have big expectations for Final Cut. We'll see what happens. But it's not this, to me, the 10.5 is pretty disappointing at this point. So we'll see. But anyway, Brad, I'm going to have dinner. What do you think?
I think it's time for dinner here in Utah. So if you haven't had dinner yet, I bet you're really hungry.
It was an hour. It came an hour ago. My girlfriend's got it heated up, waiting for me. I said I'll be on for. I'll only on for 10 minutes because there was only 3 lines in the App Store, right? There was only 3 lines. Now there's more notes, and HLG is there. So yeah,
HLG. Interesting.
Very interesting. All right, everybody. I'll be back on over the weekend. Probably. Well, who knows what the heck's going on? Oh. I'm going to do an unboxing video live of my phone tomorrow. It's okay. Everybody does these fancy schmancy produced videos. I'm going to do, this is my case that I got from my iPhone 12. Coming tomorrow, I'm going to do a live unboxing if it comes early enough in the day. So I'll be back on tomorrow for that. Just live, not nothing produced. It'll look like this. Oh, here it is. I'm going to unbox it and whatever. All right, so we'll see. I still have complete faith in the future of Final Cut. We'll see what happens with this. Let's wait for the summit. I guess that's my main point. Let's wait for the summit. If Brad's happy over here, if Brad's happy after the summit's over, that's a good barometer. If he's smiling, if he's frowning, that's not good. Same with me.
I don't know. When I get traumatized, I tend to laugh a lot. So, just you'll be able to tell though.
Yeah, it's a matter of being happy. So, if Brad and I are happy next week after the presentation, you'll know it, and that'll be a good sign. All right, everybody. But it's been 3 years. I'm not disagreeing with you. It has been 3 years. The numbering system, something's happened in the numbering system. It's not the same as it has been in the past. 10.5 seems to be a reset for the universal apps. Logic went from 10.5 to 10.6 in 6 months. I was suspicious of that from the beginning, but love the rotary dial phone. I'm not even worried about that right now. I don't want to talk to anybody from Apple. Wait till next week.
Your phone or Alex's?
My phone they're talking about. I just showed a picture of it.
Oh, okay.
All right, everyone, we're going to head out of here, and I'll be back tomorrow with if my phone comes like before lunch or by 1 o'clock, I'll come back on here and just do a quick unboxing of my new phone. We'll talk more about Final Cut Pro 10.5. It's not going to stop. This is going to cause a big uproar. It already has across the community, and we'll continue to talk about it. That's all. I'm not going to argue about it. We'll talk. We're adults, aren't we? I think we're adults. Right, Brad?
Last time I checked.
Yeah. All right, everyone. We'll talk to you all later. Brad and I are going to both have dinner. I'll be back tomorrow. And over the weekend, I'm going to be doing some more coffee with Final Cut Pro TV Live leading up to the Global Summit. Talk to everybody later.